All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lisa Partida with Homemaking LA, and today we have Taylor with Universal City Studios Credit Union, and today's topic is going to be financial planning for the future, and I'll pass it along to Taylor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Lisa and Home Again LA, for having us as usual. Excited to continue doing these financial workshop series, just a way to give back to the community. As always, if you have any questions during the presentation, you're more than welcome to ask me. I can stop, happy to answer anything. You could follow up after, and I'm happy to talk about anything that you guys would like as well. So tonight's going to be about financial planning for the future. My name's Taylor with University Studios Credit Union. My role is community engagement liaison. So I do a lot of things out in the community, different things like this, ways to give back. So financial planning for the future is a lot that goes into it. It's obviously a very general term, just a general planning for the future, but there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And what I like to say as we talk about these topics, especially about saving things for the future, a lot of people get a lot of anxiety about it. They feel a lot of pressure. We understand that we're all human and we all have different, situations, different times in our life, etc. But we just kind of want to give everyone an outlook, a guideline for this because a lot of times we don't get that opportunity. It's not usually taught in school unless you go to some sort of class like this. You don't really get a taste of it kind of all broken down for you. So just take as much of the information as you want, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So some of the things that we're planning to talk about today is retirement savings and basic and planning basics, estate planning essentials, education savings and other long-term goals, and then goals and a kind of a recap of what we discuss. So, retirement savings and planning basics. So here we're talking about what retirement planning really means, why starting early, and even how small things matter. Then we're gonna kind of talk a little bit about common retirement saving options, and kind of what they are. So just kind of starting off here. So what retirement planning really means. So basically, what it means is a way to save for, those times when we retire, because a lot of times once we retire, that paycheck stops. Now we might get something, Social Security. Some people, if you work for, the government, you might get some sort of pension. As a teacher, you might get something like that. But a lot of places, it is on you to contribute. People don't, plan for your own retirement. A lot of it is on you, and especially nowadays, Social Security is not going to really cover most of your lifestyle as you retire. A lot of people think that, oh, if I just have this much money, maybe my house is paid off in a perfect world. Great, you have a house, you don't have to pay, maybe rent, income, anything like that. But you got to think that, maybe your expenses might go down a little bit in retirement, but maybe they'll go up. Maybe you plan to, travel when you retire. And these are things you want to take into account. And the biggest thing that we always say is starting early. Now, again, I know we don't all have that. If, we could be looking at ourselves and saying, "Oh, I wish I started in my 20s." That's totally fine. I mean, starting at any time is great. You're ahead of the game a lot of times. Majority of people don't have anything saved for retirement, and there's a bunch of studies on that. But even starting small really matters when you're starting early, because there's this great thing that we love, I love, called compound interest. And interest just in general is really huge. That if you're saving for something, and you say, okay, I want to save for a year from now. If you want to save, thousands of dollars a year from now, you're gonna have to put a lot of money down per paycheck, or you're gonna have to put a lot of money away. But if you're saying I want to save a couple $1,000s 30 years from now, if you do that math and divide it by 30, you're only having to put a small amount away to reach those goals. So the earlier we can start, the better in a lot of these situations. And even if you're, in your 40s, in your 50s, and you're maybe not planning to retire until 65, 70, that's still, even if you're not planning to retire until 70 and you're in your 50s, that's still 20 years of savings. That's a huge, huge amount. And especially when we're talking about that compounding interest, which is basically talking about how once you have, let's say you have $5 or let's say $10 in an account, and let's say there's 5% interest on that. Um, that's $5 right there that you'll be earning in interest. But then you'll have, because of that interest that you've earned, you now have $105 in there. And then when you get paid interest the next time, you're getting paid interest on that $105. And then it keeps building and keeps building and keeps building. So that's why compounding interest is so big, because it really just kind of exponentially helps you grow your money for retirement. Um, so these are common retirement savings options. So we do have a 401k employment sponsored retirement plan. So legally, if you are a full-time employee, and for a lot of part-time employees, your employer does need to offer you at least a 401k or some sort of retirement plan option. They don't have to do any sort of match or anything like that, but they do have to offer you something. And that's again basically just a plan that sets you up where you can have money deducted straight out of your paycheck and goes to this long-term savings retirement plan. Then we have IRA. It stands for individual retirement accounts. These are similar. I would say IRAs and 401ks are very similar in a lot of ways. They're just called different. There's a couple, small nuances here and there. But definitely definitely very similar. And then Roth accounts. So these are a lot of times these are Roth IRAs. So again, very similar to the other two, but what's very different about Roth accounts is that you're paying taxes now, not later. So normally, when you have a 401k or you have an IRA and you put money away, when you go to take that out, the government wants to tax you on that money. They don't want you to just be getting, tax-free money. So they will tax you on that account. So usually when you pull it out to use it, when you're 65, 70, 75, 80, whatever it is, they will charge you taxes when you're pulling that out of your account, because they see it as income. So they're basically taxing your income. Um, Now the Roth account, basically what that does is it taxes, you pay the taxes now. So you pay the taxes right now, but then when you take it out in, once you're retired, you don't get taxed on it. So it's kind of a dependent thing on what you prefer, and two, you also got to look at what your tax bracket you might be in at that time. So a lot of people like using Roth IRAs, especially if they start saving early. Because if you're paying taxes at that time, but then maybe in your retirement, you're expecting to have, a higher income because you'll be at the end of your career. Maybe you're expecting to have more money in the bank. Um, and if you pay taxes in a higher tax bracket, um, then that'll make a big difference later on in life, and it'll actually save you money if you open up that Roth IRA and start paying taxes ahead of time. So these are just some different nuances, some different things that you want to take into account if you are planning to open an account or if you have these options in front of you. Um, so again, the difference between 401k and IRAs, the big difference is going to be if you're doing it on your own or through work. So most time, if an employer is offering you something, it's going to be a 401k plan, whereas an IRA, that's something that you can open up on your own. So maybe the 401k plan that your work offers, you're not a huge fan of, or maybe you don't want to worry about doing it through work and you just want to open up an IRA on your own, then you would open up an IRA. Some people will have their work 401k and then also open up an IRA if they're, lucky enough to be able to put money away so they can keep things a little bit separate. The IRAs are a lot more flexible in a lot of ways. Um, and then the last one, like I talked about, the Roth is different from both of those because you pay taxes now and then you get tax free when you do take it out and withdraw it eventually. So the key principles to remember. Um, we're going to talk about estate planning essentials. So, what estate planning really is, why it should matter for everyone. So what estate planning is now, instead of just talking about retirement, we're talking about all things related to your estate. So estate kind of seems like a word that we hear that is synonymous with like, oh, I have a lot of wealth, I have a big estate, but really it's a way of describing all the things that you have to your name, your assets, etc. And because it's not just necessarily the money in the bank, it could be cars, it could be homes, it could be anything that has value. you want to see what the kind of like long-term plan is going to be and all the things that go into, even if it is your money, the things that you can do with all of these different things. So you want to look at the key roles related to your estate. And especially if you have parents who are getting older, or maybe it's grandparents if you're on the younger side, all of this comes into becomes really important later on in life, but you don't want to get too late into the process before this happens. I know I've experienced it a lot with my family recently. We had some deaths in the family in the last couple of years, and that's something that you want to get done, as early as possible, because then when it comes time when you're in the hospital, in and out of the hospital, maybe the last thing you're thinking about is, wait, who's the beneficiary on my mom's account? Wait, what's the trust? Who owns the trust? All that stuff. The least you can worry about later on, the better. So that could be beneficiaries on your account. That could be adding a joint. A lot of times when young adults will open an account, they'll have their parents be on his joint, but later on in life, potentially the kids should be on his joint for the parents as they start to age. Because I know, coming from a financial institution, if you're not joint on someone's account, or if you don't have power of attorney, or something like that, we really can't let you do anything on that parent's account. So if they are maybe have dementia, like was the case with someone in my family, it's really hard if you're not on that account in any way. So the more that you can do again ahead of time, is huge, and you want to make sure you're kind of keeping track of who these key roles and decision makers are. Um, and then trust. So trusts are going to be something that you're able to put your entire kind of financial profile or your entire account into a trust. It's just a little bit easier later on in life. There is certain regulations around it, but if you put all your money in a trust, it becomes easier once, maybe you do pass, or as you get later on in life, just knowing your assets are protected, because um, it's a lot easier to, hand off to someone else. If it's just a normal account, sometimes things can get a little difficult down the line. Um, trust versus a will. I won't dig into this too much, but there is a few key differences that you are going to want to know. If you have specific questions around that, I'm happy to sit down with you separate, or talk to someone on our team who's a little bit more knowledgeable about the trust versus wills, because some of it can get a little complicated. They're very similar to the IRAs and 401ks and Roth IRAs, but there's a couple key differences that depends on your situation. That you might want to choose one versus the other. But I would recommend, at as early age as you would like, to definitely look into getting a trust or a will, and deciding kind of that. And a lot of people think, it's tough for a lot of people to have that discussion about trusts and wills, because you immediately associate it with death. And I understand that that's hard, and some people, especially as they get older, they don't want to come to terms to that. But it's really, think of it more of like, just protection, and just protecting your assets, protecting your future, your family's future, etc. Um, and kind of leave it at that, I would say. So now, long-term savings and goals. So long-term savings. So what counts as a long-term goal? So long-term goal is going to be something that is, we like to say, over but 5 to 10 years. I mean, that window does change, but we're not talking about something that's going to be in the next, year, even though that might seem like a long-term goal to some people. I totally understand that. But for the terms of what we financial institutions normally call it, it's like over that 5 year mark is usually when we're talking about a long-term goal. So educations and training, savings options. So um, that's something that we can touch on a little bit, but I would say that the education specifically, it's something that you could save for your kids. That's a big one. Maybe if you want to go back to school, maybe you personally, but education's savings options, there's a couple different things. There's a specific type of savings account that you can save specifically for your kids' college or some sort of educational endeavor. So that's something that you can put into an account. It's a numbered account, and you can put money in and it saves, you're going to pay way less taxes on it. And it's going to be usually higher interest than just like a normal savings account. So it's a really good option. Now, the only thing I caution you about this specific education savings plan is that it can only be used for educational funds. So if you're saving for, your kids to go to college potentially and they decide not to go to college and they want to go, into the military or, they want to put that money towards, down payment on a house or a car, you're not able to use it for that. It's very specific on what you're able to use it for. So again, it's a really good tool to use, and I would recommend that you take advantage of it, but just keep that in the back of your mind, especially if you're not someone who is really going to push your kids into college. Totally fine, but just keep that in mind. Um, so we also want to make sure we're kind of keeping this mindset of being adaptable. And that's why I kind of at the beginning was trying to take the pressure off everyone because when we get into savings and we get in these rigid goals, we really want to stick to it. And I'm someone who does that as much as anyone. I love sticking to goals. I love hitting the deadlines and great. But we also know that things happen. And I've talked about this in kind of other presentations as well, is that, be be graceful with yourself. I would say give yourself grace. Goals can change, plans can change, situations can change, jobs can change, and all of that might affect your savings goals. And it's good to kind of check in every once in a while and reassess this. I wouldn't try to fit, a square peg into a round hole. I would say kind of reassess your goals and maybe you move the budget line. Maybe it's, you move the year that you want to hit this at, or maybe it's the amount that you want to hit. But I would just be open to being flexible and going forward with that. Um, Small steps do really matter, and that's something that we touched on in this as well, is that sm going into things, you know, just taking that first step or just taking small steps is really, really important. And it's a great way to start, whether it's with retirement. A lot of people, which we'll talk on later, a lot of people see this big deadline of how am I going to save this much money to be able to be set up in retirement, and they get kind of frozen with it and they don't even want to start. But I always tell people just start, even if it's putting, $10 away, $50 away per paycheck. It's something, it's a start. And then as you hopefully grow in your career or, other means, maybe some other payments drop off, other loans drop off, whatever it is, you can potentially up that number. But starting small is huge. It's starting. Starting is the goal. That's what I like to say. Starting is the goal a lot of times. So challenges. So challenge one, I don't have enough money to plan for the future. That would be the number one answer on Family Feud when you're talking about retirement. Normally, a lot of people say that, and I totally get it. Retirement is, out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people. The present is what matters. A lot of people will say, well, I mean, retirement is great, but if I don't have money to, feed my family today, it doesn't really matter. I totally understand that. I really do, and it's not something that, we want to take lightly. What this challenge could look like, income is inconsistent and unpredictable. We totally understand that. All money, goes towards immediate needs a lot of time. And retirement savings or estate planning feels, unrealistic or frankly just too far down the road. Um, Now, I'll give you guys kind of a reality-based solution. So, planning is not just about how much you save, it's about knowing your options. Small, irregular steps still count. Education today prepares you for the opportunity tomorrow. So even just sitting down for a class like this, or sitting down with your financial institution, shameless plug, hopefully it's ours, but any financial institution, just sitting down with them and having that conversation, even if you don't walk away with that, with all your money into a trust or, putting thousands away a year towards an IRA or 401k, just educating yourself, already puts you a step ahead. And then, like I said in that kind of little sentence, irregular, somewhat inconsistent steps is still a huge step forward. You don't know how many people haven't started saving at all for retirement, or it's not even, on their possibilities of what they think they can achieve later on in life. Um, so that's one challenge that I just, always tell people that it seems like the big end of the world, but just starting small is huge. So the other one, my life isn't stable enough for long-term planning. Again, totally understand what this looks like. Housing, work, or family situations change often. Goals shift or feel uncertain. The fear of making the wrong decision always pops up. I All of that completely is understandable, and I understand why people say this a lot. But as a kind of reality-based solution again, and something that I just want to, put in people's heads, planning does not lock you in. It gives you flexibility. Short-term goals can support long-term stability. Plans can pause, restart, pick back up at any time. So again, it's going back to that adaptability. A lot of these things, it's about starting small and being adaptable. So things change all the time. It's kind of like the saying where, people who don't want kids totally understand and respect that, but a lot of people will say, I don't want kids because, I don't have enough money, I don't have this, I don't have that. Coming from someone who has a 2-year-old at home, there's no perfect time to have a kid. There's no perfect time to be woken up every 2 hours during the night. I promise you. I don't care if you're in your 20s or your 60s. There's no good time for that. And there's no good time, obviously there's no good time, but there's also, not a necessarily bad time. Just starting small when it comes to putting money away, really, really helps. Just educating yourself is really, really big, um, and just something for you all to think about. And then number three, I don't trust financial systems. I feel like they're not for people like me. Hear this quite a bit, especially nowadays. I would say trust is a huge barrier for entry for a lot of people. From all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom right now, trust is probably at a low, and for good reason. I totally understand. There's a lot of bad actors out there. There's a lot of fraud going on, a lot of schemes. I totally understand that. But what I would say is just based on some of the things I've heard in the past, like past negative experiences with banks or debt, fear of fees, penalties, or judgment, feeling excluded from traditional financial planning. Those are some of the things that we hear a lot when we're having these conversations, and they're totally valid. I totally understand that. Everyone has different life experiences and has been in different situations. This kind of solution and the things that we usually say in response to that are, credit unions are member owned and people focused. Education first, products second. Transparency and trust matter more than complexity. And that's something, again, I'll do one more shameless plug today, but credit unions are going to be there for you a lot more times than the bigger banks. Just in my personal experience, the bigger banks, a lot of times you are just a number to them, and just trying to do what they can to kind of push forward their financial agenda. But credit unions, and I will speak specifically to ours, we're there to help people. I don't get paid for this. We don't get any commission or anything like that for being here. It's literally just for education purposes and to help people. We see a need in the community. We see a lot of times a lack of financial education. And we see people who do want to learn, and they do, just need someone, just that extra little, showing them that extra little care, and it really goes a long way. So I definitely recommend that if you don't, have a credit union, reach out to a local one, even if it's not ours. I highly recommend that because when it feels like the system's against you, I will say that most credit unions do work with their best intentions, and they're there to help, and I can attest to that from our credit union's perspective. Okay, so kind of the key takeaways here. Planning is possible at any starting point, whether it's, great if you want to start at 18 or if you start at 50. A lot of people will maybe, go through life and have a whole second part of their career. And maybe you have to start saving a little bit more aggressively if you're starting in your 40s or 50s. But it's completely doable. Don't think that it's not achievable. Small steps create future options. So just starting now, it gives you a leg up, because a lot of people will say, well, there's no point in me, starting now because I'm not going to hit the savings goal that I want. But if you don't start at all, you're definitely not going to start. You're definitely not going to get there, and you're going to have nothing when you retire. At least starting small, you never know. even if it's just, a small amount of money that helps out in retirement, that you're able to go on that one vacation that you really wanted in retirement. And maybe it's not, the lifestyle that you always dreamed of as retirement, but those small things really matter. A little bit of money that you can give to your grandkids, or a little bit of money that you can, pay off this, pay off the house, that, maybe you only, instead of $1 million saved up in retirement, maybe it's only 20,000, but you have, $15,000 left on that mortgage that you've been paying off for, 29 years, and you're able to pay that off. But $20,000, that could be saved up, in, 15 years, saving, $100 a paycheck. Like it's not this huge unattainable goal. So just those small steps do really make a big impact down the road. Protection and preparation go hand in hand. So I would say obviously preparation usually comes first, but they do go hand in hand. A lot of people are actually fearful a lot of times of like making the wrong decision, and oh, I should have put my money into a will and not a trust, or a trust and not a will, or they're worried, do I put all my money in trust this financial institution? But I would say ask questions. You can come to us, ask any questions that you need or that you have. And it's going to give you not only options down the road, but that protection. A lot of this planning is to protect you later on in life, set you up for success. It's not with any bad motives. It's all from an altruistic, just positive outlook on your future, and just there to help. Um, as always, I like to promote GreenPath, and the reason that we do this is because this is, our trusted partner, but they go even a step beyond. We're great and we're happy to help with anything that you guys need, whatever questions, and we can make the introduction to GreenPath, but they have a whole team specifically designed to sit with people one-on-one, create financial plans from start to finish, create savings plans, retirement plans. They do, 10, 15 webinars a month. Like they do it to the next level. They are specifically designed just for this, financial education and financial planning. So if you want more information and even more details, reach out to them. And it doesn't have to be just the topic that we talked about tonight. They do, debt management plans, student loan counseling, and all the stuff that you see on the screen. So they're a great resource that I definitely recommend that you reach out to, or reach out to me, and I'm happy to connect you. So just the kind of last takeaways, and then we'll be wrapping up here shortly. But planning is personable and flexible. We talked about that a lot. Don't feel like it has to be rigid. Don't feel hold yourself to such a high standard that you're all you're very lacking that self-confidence, and maybe not happy with yourself. Just small goals. Start very small. Have low expectations, and hopefully you overachieve those, and blow right through them. Progress looks different for everyone. And this is kind of what we're talking about above in that personal and flexible. I mean, everyone has different jobs, everyone has different careers. Even, if I have someone who's a coworker who has the exact same job as me, we get paid the exact same amount. But I have a kid and they don't. They have a car, I don't, etc. I mean, whatever those different things are, everyone's plan looks different, and everyone's progress and everyone's success looks different. You know, maybe if you've never had anyone in your family who's ever been able to save anything for retirement, just saving $20,000 for retirement, it could be huge, and that could be monumental. Whereas someone who's maybe, very high earner, who might be a lawyer, their goals are going to be very different. But you don't need to compare yourself to those other people. Everyone's plan looks different. Everyone's means look different, and that's totally okay. And we're here to help everyone from A to Z on all those different levels. Um, Knowledge creates power and choice. That's why we do these financial workshops, because just learning about it and the knowledge that you gain from it already gives you that leg up on, anyone else who, doesn't have that. Because a lot of times we're not taught this anywhere else besides maybe, a workshop like this, or, somewhere that you might be able to find online. But I just, respect all of you for making the time to even come to a workshop like this and just learn more, because then it gives you power to choice. A lot of times, if you don't know your choices, then you don't really have that power to really decide. Because we've had so many people who come up to us, and they're like, hey, I want to open up an IRA, and we're like, oh, so what about this other thing? And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, oh yeah, you've had you've had a 401k that you haven't been contributing to for 10 years. And they're like, I didn't know that when I just, signed up when I was 18, when I started working at Universal in the, theme park, they just signed me up for it and I never even thought about a cent. So that's that, knowledge is power, and just knowing what your options are gives you an extreme amount of power, and you should feel a lot more, confident coming out of that. But you don't need to know everything. Just, knowing that you have options can then say, okay, now I want to really look into it more and research what's the difference between a will and a trust, or I want to set up a meeting with Taylor and, he can walk me through those things. So those kinds of things. And then lastly, support is available. You're not alone. I will always say our credit union has a huge team of people that are there to help and can walk you through it hand in hand. Also, GreenPath is fantastic if you want that even extra level and have phone calls every day. But don't feel like you're alone. And the last thing in all of this, when I'm trying to tell people, I would tell students if I was a teacher, don't be ever embarrassed about not knowing something. Again, everyone comes from different backgrounds. Everyone, has different means, and don't ever feel embarrassed. I would say feel proud to ask the question because you're committed to learning, and don't feel like you're alone. Happy to answer any questions that any of you have. So lastly, just to kind of throw out all our information on here, again, you can follow up after with Lisa or I, and we can happy to get you connected if you have more questions. But this is the information for our credit union. This is our director, Alberto. He does these in Spanish. So if you want to know more about this, and maybe Spanish is a little bit more digestible for you, he does these in Spanish, and then that's my information below. Email is always great in case either one of us is away from our desk. We're running around doing things like this all the time during the day. So feel free to shoot us an email. We're happy to get back to you as quickly as we can. But aside from that, thank you all. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them before we jump off and let you guys go eat dinner, get back to your families.
I actually have a question for you.
Yes.
Um, I just curious because I heard you to mention the 401k matching. Like, how does that usually work? The employer, like, let's say you're gonna be, I guess, putting in about 3.5 out of your paycheck, and then they also put in 3.5 from the amount of your check, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. Great question. I kind of glossed over that,
Yeah.
but yeah, happy to dive into that a little bit. So you're exactly right. So I would always ask if your employer does. A lot of times it'll be in like a contract that you sign, but if not, go to your HR, go to your manager, and definitely ask because they'll be able to find out. A lot of employers nowadays, especially in this competitive landscape, they will offer 401k matching, and basically what it is if it says up to 3%, up to 4%, up to 5%, a lot of times it's right in that range from like 2 to 5%, maybe 6. So basically what that is it's up to 2% of your salary. So basically what that is you can do that. You can do up to 2% of your salary. So you would contribute first to that 401k, and you would say, okay, I want to do the full 2% of my salary, which is going to be X amount of money per paycheck or X amount of money per month, and then they will match it if they have an employer matching. So I always say if you can, try to max that out at least. And the
Okay.
reason is because it's free money.
Yeah.
Every dollar that you put in, like what a great a great thing. Like there's no better bet in Vegas that just basically says if I put down a dollar, someone will give me a dollar back. And you win it 100% of the time.
Yeah.
There's literally there's no better deal anywhere in gambling that you're 100% guaranteed to win whatever money you put in up to this amount. So sometimes that can be a lot, but again, think about it. You're getting that money back 100% of the time. So that's usually how it works, and I highly recommend that if you don't know what that number is, to take that into account and see if that's something that you can do or want to do because it's a really cool tool that a lot of employers do tend to do.
That's cool. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I don't have any other questions. That was my main question that I had.
Yeah, it's a great question. Great
All right.
question.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Taylor. I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody who's here. I hope you guys were also learning as well. Thank you. All
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
right. Bye.